it's about the I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Being able to run as he shoots the moon to the fans here in Green Bay.
That is a disgusting act by Randy Moss.
This is not Detroit, man. This is the Super Bowl.
Here we go. Stop from the gun to the touchdown. It is caught. Touchdown.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Final weekend, final week of the NFL 2023, technically 2024 season. It's been a heck of a season, but we got a great show. We got a lot to talk about. We have the final coaching vacancies filled. I know that's old news at this point, but we'll briefly break it down. You know, we got obviously the superb owl. We're going to definitely break that down. I've gotten a variety of points that I want to talk about. I'm breaking down every position that I think sort of matters. I don't have rankings exactly, but I'll give you my perspective on any of these things. We also got a look at the NHL standings as we enter into the post All-Star break, where teams are at. How we feeling? What's the vibe like in the National Hockey League? And I also want to send a personal message to the NBA, mainly to my Detroit Pistons, for this trade deadline. And it will be emotional. We'll all sort of be involved. You know, we'll put in our grievances. We'll put in the things that we love. That will be a very short time because there's not a whole lot to love about this team, the Pistons, this year. But we'll get to it. First things first, I think we got to break down the Super Bowl first, right? Actually, I don't know, because that's a headliner. Obviously, it's the thumbnail, title of the show, what's going to happen. I don't know if I want to start with it, though, right? Because it's such this big thing. I mean, it's the Super Bowl. This is the last football game we will get until August. Think about that, all right? Just for a second, right? Think about how much at this point, even myself included, how much you're like, oh, gosh, I'm just tired of football. I want to get on to newer sports. Hockey's getting hot. You know, college basketball's starting to heat up. My Spartans beat the Wolverines last Tuesday. It was a great day. You know, baseball's going to be starting here near, like, spring training starts in a couple of weeks. You know, I want to be talking about different stuff. But just think about where you're going to be at in August, where you're dying. You need football. You don't care. You don't care if it's spring training. You don't care if it's preschool. We're off to a fantastic start. I don't know what I want to do here. What do I want to start with? What do I want to start with? I don't know. I'm like genuinely at a loss. This is why we talk a lot. This is why we do it live. We'll do it live. You know what? We'll start with the old news. We'll go from top to bottom on the show sheet. That's what we'll do. Yeah. All right. So first things first, old news. I know, but we'll talk about it. Ravens hire Mike Macdonald in a 6-year contract to be their head coach. Mike Macdonald, of course, the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, the number one defense. I want to say it was the number one defense in the league. It was certainly in the top 5 or top 10 at the very least. Mike Macdonald, also a former defensive coordinator for the University of Michigan. So a little bit of a connection there. I think this is the next big step for them. I mean, the Seahawks have got some defensive guys. I know particularly in the young group, they have Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. He had a pretty good season. I think he got hurt though. They still got Quandre Diggs. They got some units in their defense to where, you bring in a defensive head-minded coach, and we know that the Seahawks, at least when they were really successful, they were a defensive team, So I think it makes sense, and I think it also makes sense given the fact that Pete Carroll is still in the organization, him being a defensive coach himself, and coaching those units to back-to-back Super Bowls. Could have been back-to-back Super Bowl wins, but mistakes were made. We'll just leave it at that. We don't want to hurt the poor Seahawks fans, but I think this is a really good hire. The thing that I don't like about it is because I know that the Lions will have to be playing the Seahawks for, years and years to come, being an NFC team. And the Seahawks just always seem to have our numbers. So the thing is, though, it's a good hire on paper. Bringing in a defensive coordinator who had a lot of success, taking that step to be a head coach, it's a bigger step than I think a lot of people take credit for. It's not like, it's not as like easy as just slipping in. Oh, okay, so he used to coach the defense, he used to coordinate the defense, so he's going to just be able to take the helm. It's not always that way. Sometimes you have guys, personalities don't mend. Say what you will about Geno Smith, he really seemed to vibe well with Pete Carroll in that offense. I don't know if Mike McDaniel is going to have that same relationship with Geno Smith, or if Geno Smith is even their future. I don't know. They might be looking to take a quarterback in this draft. It's a very deep quarterback draft. They could be looking to take, where do they pick? They pick sort of later in the draft. Let me actually look that up. NFL draft order. Take a look here. Where do the Seahawks take? Yeah, they're at about the midway point. 16. Could you take a quarterback? Let's see what the mock draft has them taking. Mock draft has them taking offensive line. Okay. But who would be available at the quarterback position? I guess I can't really tell. Doesn't look like they have a whole lot of people available. For whatever reason, they have the Broncos taking J.J. McCarthy, which is, okay, I don't know if that's going to happen, but let's see. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Penix would still be available. Could you imagine if Michael Penix falls to the Seahawks? I guess I wouldn't be that shocked, but he seemed like too good of a prospect for teams to just totally push until the second round. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Either way, with Seattle, I don't know that they have it at quarterback. I think Geno Smith, he had a great year his first year there with the comeback player of the year. This year, he started off looking decent and then just sort of fell off, and the team kind of fell off a little bit, but obviously well coached. They were going to be a winning team, just not make the playoffs. And, Mike McDaniel is looking to get it back to what they were used to in the late 2010s with Seattle, making the playoffs and making Super Bowl runs, plural. I could have just read the article. It says they had the 16 pick in the draft. And that this past season, it says here, Seattle went 9-8 this past season and missed the playoffs for just the fourth time in 14 seasons under Carroll. So, you're going to be taking over some high stakes, goals, right? Like this team, the Seattle team, they know what it's like to make the playoffs consistently. So for one, you got to do that, right? They're not that far removed from a playoff run in 2022, right? They made, they can go on a run exactly, but they made the playoffs. So he's got to kind of get it going. And I don't think he's going to do terribly, but again, you never know with these coordinator hires. Like, he could be a very good coordinator, but being a head coach is a lot more difficult than being a coordinator. So just wanted to briefly touch on that. Obviously, it's older news, but the other older news that is technically kind of shock. I don't know why I said technically. It's a little shocking, I suppose, is the Commanders hired Dan Quinn. So another defensive coordinator fills the final head coaching vacancy. Dan Quinn, obviously the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, who was the defensive coordinator for their playoff collapse. So I don't really want to say that it's like, totally the worst hire ever because of that final game. I think it's a little bit of recency bias. Overall, over the season, the Cowboys did have a very good defense. Hey, the Lions have one of the top offenses in the league, and they scored, 19 points on them, quote unquote, 19 points. It's one of those things where, they were a well-coordinated group. The only problem I have with this is you're sitting in a situation where your team doesn't really have a whole lot on defense. You traded Montez Sweat. You traded Chase Young. I don't even know who's in their secondary. And maybe that's just on me. I'm not a Washington Commanders fan, but I do know that they have a young quarterback in Sam Howell that they might stick around. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I know that they have, some pretty good wide receivers, right? They just drafted the guy a couple of years ago. The year St. Brown was taken, they drafted a receiver. I can't think of his name. Don't they have the not Money Badger. That's Michael Badgley. I can't think of the guy. I can't think. Hold on. Now I'm looking this up. Washington Commanders, not the Wizards, not the Wizards, not the Wizards. And now I've clicked something and it's gone. Okay. I did not want to do that. And we're off to a fantastic start. At least we're doing the boring news at this point. Washington Commanders depth chart. What is there? Scary Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin. I remembered it as soon as I hit enter. I was like, Terry McLaurin. That's his name. You know, you got Terry McLaurin. You got Diami Brown. You got Curtis Samuel. You know, like you have Jahad Dotson. That's the guy that was that was taken before St. Brown by the Commanders. Yeah, like you have some wide receivers. You know, running game is a little bit desired, and obviously you don't really know if you're going to stick around with Sam Howell at quarterback, especially given your draft position. You're going to be taken. You're going to have one of those 3 top quarterbacks. Well, I say 3 top quarterbacks. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft. You're going to have your pick of the litter, largely. I mean, obviously, it's a good shot you don't have Caleb Williams. Good shot you don't have Drake May. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm just shocked that they would go defensive coach. And that's not to say that you can't, you know, have a successful offense if you're a quote-unquote defensive coach. It's just now a matter of how they're going to handle the offense. Of course, it was recently news that they hired Cliff Kingsbury to be their quarterback coach, to be their offensive coordinator. Now, Cliff Kingsbury doesn't have a great reputation in the NFL because of his awful tenure with Arizona, where he would go after these great starts and then completely collapse in the second half of the season. I remember the 2021 season where the Cardinals were so good in the first half. I thought maybe they were going to make a shot at it. You know, Kingsbury is legit. Kyler Murray is legit. And they just fall apart. Now, Kingsbury in the coordinator role, I think, is a little bit more sound. I think it's a little bit more his speed. I think it could work out well. Again, but the question is, are they going to run it back with Sam Howell? Are they going to end up taking, you know, Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix? I don't know. Any of these quarterbacks, Michael Penix. Heck, take J.J. McCarthy. I don't know. Like, I think whichever quarterback they take is going to have a lot of weapons in the offense as far as receiver. As far as offensive line, not so much. And as far as defense, not so much. So, look, the Commanders have a lot, but it's weird. When I look at the bottom 3, like, now I'm looking it up again. When I look at the Tankathon, when I look at this draft, like, I kind of feel like of the 3 teams outside of Chicago obviously traded for that pick from Carolina. So between Carolina, Washington, and New England, and you can even throw Arizona in there, there's a weird sense in me that kind of thinks Washington has the best future. Like Bryce Young, I don't know if I believe in him as a prospect. I wasn't a big fan of him to begin with. I thought this past QB class was kind of weak, which it largely was outside of C.J. Stroud being legit. But like Bryce Young, there was nothing in him. Even when I watched him in college, which to be fair was brief, I just never found anything all that inspiring. It's like, he looks okay. He's playing on a really good team. There wasn't anything that really set him apart, like in the way that, say, like a Trevor Lawrence or a Joe Burrow, even a Tua. Like Tua was like seemed more like set apart to me. But either way, depending on where they want to go, this Dan Quinn and then pairing with Cliff Kingsbury on the offensive side, I don't know. It could work out well, but there is an angle on this that I wanted to talk about as a Lions fan. This whole Ben Johnson, Washington Commanders drama to me is hysterical because it sort of works in our favor, right? So a lot of the rumors coming out, Ben Johnson's offer was, you know, absurd, and the Commanders ownership was not a fan of the fact that he was offering, or that was what he wanted. That was his asking price, so to speak. We'll never really know what the asking price is. The owners could be very cheap. I don't know. It's a new ownership group, so we don't really know their approach to these sorts of things at this point. But the other thing that made it interesting was Ben Johnson pointed out, allegedly, I don't know that we don't know that he said this, but it would make sense, that apparently he didn't really interview well, according to the ownership, but he also didn't really like the ownership of the Commanders because he said that they were quote unquote basketball people and that they had too much confidence in their football knowledge. Now, I just want to double check because I'm pretty sure I know who the group is, but Washington Commanders ownership. So let's see. Here's the ownership group on their official website as soon as it wants to load. You have a variety of people. It doesn't look like there's any one particular. There's Josh Harris is, I think, the head, so to speak. Josh Harris, who I believe is the owner of the 76ers, right? Yeah, he's the owner of the 76ers and then also the owner of the Washington Commanders. You also have Magic Johnson. Those are the two big names. The rest of these, I mean, does anybody know who Santo Domingo family? Is that the whole family owns the team? Jeez, they're a limited partner. But anybody big fans of, I guess Andy Snyder. I'm assuming he has some relation to Dan. That's actually a good question. Who is Andy Snyder? Now I'm like doing a deep dive. Andy Snyder Commanders. Who is this Snyder? Oh, this is a great. Oh, this is okay. This is now we're going to the source here. r/Commanders. I don't know. Nobody has any idea. Who is this guy? Does anybody know who Andy Snyder is? How do we know it's not Dan? Actually, isn't Dan Snyder spelled differently? No, it's the same. Is it his son? Maybe I can see that. Does he have a son? He has a spouse. He has 3 children, so it could be his son. Anyways, Commanders hire Dan Quinn. I think it's the Commanders. So in my mind, like, it could work out, and I would actually want it to work out because I think it would be cool to have another, like, I know they're not the Redskins anymore, but the Redskins as a franchise were historically a pretty successful group. I mean, they've won multiple Super Bowls, I believe, right? I mean, like, we're just doing a Commanders, like, deep dive. Yeah, they've won multiple championships. It's not like there's some scrub franchise with no history. It's just, basically since you had, Snyder take over, it's been a whole lot of nothing. Whole lot of Robert Griffin III losing his leg. Whole lot of Sam Howell existing. That was mean. I didn't mean to say that about Sam Howell. But either way, we could talk about that all day. We're going to move along. Move along to the NHL. So the NHL is at the All-Star break. So first things first, I wanted to talk about the Red Wings. Obviously, they're my team. Got to talk about them. There was an interesting post I saw on Reddit here where they broke down a bunch of the stats for the Red Wings at the All-Star break. So I'm going to read them, and then we'll talk about it. So at the All-Star break, the Red Wings are 6 points into wildcard 2, and 1 point back out of third place in the Atlantic. Dylan Larkin is on a 12-game point streak and on pace for the best season of his career. Lucas Raymond has 41 points in 50 games and is on pace for north of 70. Alex Lyon has the 4th best save percentage in the NHL. The Red Wings have scored 174 goals. That is 4th most in the NHL. The Red Wings have the 5th most defensive combined points with 120. Lucas Raymond leads the team in assists, while the Wings have the 4th most goals in the NHL. The penalty kill is 11th in the league at 81.2%. The power play is 12th in the league at 22.7%. The Red Wings are 8-3-2 in their last 13 games. So they had a really great month of January. Really great stuff. Obviously, they ended it kind of rough, losing in overtime to the Ottawa Senators. But the Red Wings are on the right path. I mean, like, there's no doubt about it. The Red Wings are a really good team. Like, I don't think they're like, I don't think they're like a Stanley Cup contender necessarily, but right now, 50 games in, you got 58 points. You are right there with the Toronto Maple Leafs in terms of points. Obviously, you played a couple more games than them, but you're right there with them. And as far as players, I mean, we talked about some of those stats. First of all, Lucas Raymond is having a hell of a year, like way better than I thought it was going to be. Lucas Raymond right now, he's got the 50 games, 41 points, 13 have been goals, 28 have been assists. I mean, he's the third. He's got the third most points on the team. Alex DeBrincat, the big trade that was made in the offseason, he's your second most points on the team with 43, which is incredible because I thought he was going to be the leader of this team, or not the leader in like the captain. He's not going to be the captain. Dylan Larkin is the captain, but I thought he was going to be leading in points. No, now to be fair, he's played 50 games, so he's played every game. Larkin obviously missed some time due to injury. But Larkin, despite losing time to injury, has more points. 47 points for the captain, 23 goals, 24 assists. He also leads the team in points. He leads the team in goals. Larkin is really impressing me, and it makes me feel a whole lot better that we extended this cap because he's been fantastic. And I know he's one of those players where he's not seen as a superstar. He's not seen as, an elite forward, an elite center, or an elite goal scorer, but one thing that I'll give him is that the kid's got heart. And I say he's a kid, he's like 28 years old at this point, or 27, however old he is. He's got heart, and he is the epitome of the team. And I mean, like, he obviously being the captain that comes with the territory, but he has the respect of his teammates. I think he has the respect of his peers, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think that players look at him the same way that fans look at him, where they're like, yeah, I mean, he's like pretty okay. He's probably like a second or third liner on a good team. It's like, we're a good team and he is on our first line. So I don't know if that's like we're going to end up being a Stanley Cup team with him in our first line. I don't know. I mean, like, he's got the experience. He's got the goal scoring ability. He's got the offensive prowess. The only thing I can say about him is I guess he's a negative player when he's on the ice. He's -2. Which, if you want to take plus minus for anything, I'm not a big fan of plus minus. But, he's been incredible. And on top of him, you also got guys that were brought in the offseason. You got a guy like Daniel Sprong, 13 goals, 32 points for him. You got Shane Gostisbehere, defenseman. He's got 7 goals and 25 assists. You got JT Comfort. 3 guys that were brought in the offseason in free agency are in the top 6 of points on the team. And, kind of hidden below the surface there is Mo Seider. Mo Seider's got 26 points. Now, he's not, lighting it up exactly, but he's a +2 player. 20 assists, 6 goals for Seider. He's top 10 on the team in points. He's a really solid defenseman. And even got guys like Andrew Kopp, who's having a pretty good start. 24 points for him. You got Michael Rasmussen with 22 points. Robbie Fabry with 21. Jake Wallman with 18 points. And, of course, the addition of Patrick Kane. We'll be getting him back, this Saturday likely against Vancouver. And I look at their schedule for this month, and that's where it gets a little nervous because February is not an easy month. And I don't remember when it was in the season. It was like we are going to have the toughest stretch, or like one of the toughest stretches in terms of strength of schedule. And I don't know. I don't really pay too much mind in that. I pay a little bit more mind of it in hockey and in the sports outside of football. I pay a little bit more mind to it because you're playing more games. But I mean, we got a pretty decent stretch here. We're going to start the weekend, or we're going to start the second half. We're over halfway through the season anyway. So, but we're going to start with the Canucks, Saturday, and then we go on a West Coast road trip, heading to Edmonton, back to Vancouver, then to Calgary, then to Seattle. That's going to be a tough trip. And we talked about it at the beginning of January. I think you got to win 2 out of those 3. If you could win 2 out of the 3, maybe get an overtime on one of them. If you could win 3 out of 4, or did I say 2 out of 3? I meant 2 out of 4. If you can win 2 out of those 4, if you can win, 3 out of the 4, that's fantastic. And it doesn't really matter to me which ones you win. I mean, it's gonna be tough beating Edmonton because I don't know if they're gonna lose another game. They what are they at, like 17 wins in a row? It's unbelievable what they're doing. And Vancouver looks like they could be one of the best teams in the NHL. So, I mean, if you could split with them, you play them twice in the next couple of weeks here. if you could split with them, you can win the home game, maybe lose the game on the road. Although I wouldn't like to lose the game on the road because it's at 10 p.m. and that means I don't want to stay up and then have us just lose. It'd be great if you could sweep them, but I doubt that's going to happen, to be perfectly honest. But then outside of that, you come back, you got Colorado at home, St. Louis, not as good of a team. Colorado's a very good team. Then you got Chicago on the road. That's a classic original six matchup. Now, Chicago is ass this year. They are very, very bad. But they still got Connor Bedard, and I don't know if he'll be healthy for that game. He might be. He's been out for a little bit, and I'm not sure if he'll be back for that game in particular. But then you got some East Conference teams you're going to have to beat. You got the Capitals and you got the Islanders at home to end the season. You got to beat those teams because those teams are hungry, right? Those are going to be the teams that are going to be fighting for that wild card spot that you're currently occupying. And, despite the fact that I think they're doing really well, they are still the second wild card team in the East, right? They're at the bottom level of playoff team. Now, they're close to overtaking that, right? They get a couple of wins here. They're up in, the top three in their division. But, it's not going to be easy, is my point. But moving along, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the other teams that are in the league, just my own observation. Now, again, I'm not a hockey expert. I'm not a hockey savant. So don't take this as, gospel. This is just my own observation as a fan of hockey and as an outside kind of casual fan, just outside in look, all right, as a Red Wings fan. So the Red Wings are in the playoffs. Sens and the Sabres, not so much. So the reason I'm picking on these two teams is because there was a lot of focus on the three rebuilding teams in the East. Those teams being the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres and the Ottawa Senators. Now you go to last year, Buffalo and Ottawa, they look like they were on brink to be a playoff team. You look at this year, Ottawa's in second to last in the conference. Buffalo is 48 points in 49 games played. Ottawa, for as bad as they've been, they've actually done pretty well against us, which is a little frustrating given that we have their old player in Alex DeBrincat. And I would like for DeBrincat to have some wins over his old team, but for whatever reason, they just seem to always play really well against us. Buffalo, on the other hand, I think we've beaten Buffalo a couple of times. I don't exactly remember, but either way, these were two teams that I was expecting a whole lot more. I thought maybe the Eastern Conference was going to be a lot more competitive. I thought, maybe a team like Boston was going to start to fall down. I thought maybe a team like Tampa might take a step back given, they've kind of aging, figured maybe it wasn't their time. Maybe you see Toronto maybe take a step back, losing their general manager, even despite the fact that they have a lot of talent. But it's been a lot of the big surprise for me has been the Flyers. We'll get to them a little bit later, but it just seems like the powers that be in the Eastern Conference, in the Floridas, the Tampas, the Bostons, the New York, the Rangers, I should say, not the Islanders, and the Hurricanes, and the Leafs for that matter. They don't plan on leaving. They don't plan on moving from their spots. Meanwhile, teams that are a bit disappointing, and I don't have this on the list here, teams like the Penguins. They went out and they made the trade for Carlson. Hadn't really worked out. I mean, like they're 7 points out of the wild card after the All-Star break. It's not looking good. The Devils, similar deal. They didn't go out and get a star player, but they got the Hughes brothers, and Jack Hughes gets hurt, and their team just doesn't look the same without Jack Hughes, which is to be expected. He's a superstar player. He's one of the best players in the league. But no, it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for New Jersey. I mean, they probably still can make the playoffs, and I think they probably will, just given the fact that Jack Hughes is just that good. But you're 7 points out going into the post All-Star break. You're gonna have to make some moves, especially at the trade deadline, I think. Or maybe you don't, and maybe you just say, you know what, Hughes got hurt. Season's a little bit of a wash. If you can make the playoffs, go for it. But just run it back next year, sort of thing. But either way, moving along though to the Oilers. Will they lose another game? I'm not convinced. They have won 16 straight games. I believe that is tied with the record. Now, I want to just pull up their schedule because now I'm curious. Who do they have coming up here? 20. Why is it like – I just want the games. Why is it giving me these options? Okay, this works. So they've got a game today, actually. They're playing in like 10 minutes. They play Vegas today on ESPN Plus and Hulu. So the streak could end there against a good Vegas team. Then they got Anaheim, who stinks. So that could be a win. They got LA, who has fallen apart. They fired their head coach. They got Detroit. Again, that's not going to be a super easy match, but it's going to be in their home, so they might be able to hold their own there. I think they probably could hold their own there. They beat Detroit earlier in the season in a bit of a low-scoring affair, though, during this win streak, actually. Then they got St. Louis, Dallas. I mean, they do have some tough teams that they got to play, so it would be all the more impressive for them to continue this win streak. For heck, even like, I mean, if they could do it, if they could beat Vegas, then there's a good shot they get to 19 games. And frankly, there's a good shot they can get to 20 against Detroit. And maybe even 21 against St. Louis. Like the next game that I think they could potentially lose, Dallas. I mean, outside of Vegas. I mean, they could definitely lose to Vegas. But Dallas, Boston coming up. That's on the 21st. I mean, they really are getting into the weaker part of their schedule, and I think they're taking advantage of it. But despite the fact that they've won 16 in a row, they're still just third in their division. That's how good Vancouver and Vegas have been this year. Now, to be fair, both of those teams have played more games, so that sort of grows that discrepancy. Vancouver's played 4 more games, Vegas has played 5. But either way, they've won 16 straight games. That means they started this win streak when they were 13-15. They have lost just 1 game in overtime all year. Here's my thing. And I'm not trying to be mean, okay? But it might come off as mean. You can win 30 games in a row. Do it in the playoffs. Because this Edmonton team is loaded, okay? Do you want me to just hold on? Let me just run off their roster real quick, okay? Let me just run it off, okay? You ready for this? All right. Obviously, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. You got Zach Hyman. You got Evan Bouchard. You got Evander Kane having a decent year as well. 29 points for the left-handed for the left wing, right? Yeah, that's what L means. The left wing, right? You know, like they got a lot of good teams. When you have basically the 2 top players in the league, it makes sense that you're going to be a good team. But Connor McDavid kind of started a little slow, and he's missed a couple of games here and there, I believe. And they've only played 40. Yeah, they played 45 total games, so he's missed a couple of games there. Draisaitl's played every game. But when you have that pairing of McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and Hopkins and Bouchard, I mean, you're going to win a lot of games, right? You got 5 guys in 40-plus point territory. But I just need them to do it in the playoffs. And I would love for Edmonton to bring the cup back to Canada. I mean, like, this is a team that, obviously, Wayne Gretzky, this is a historic team. It's a historic franchise that knows success. Haven't known success in a very long time. And the country of Canada hasn't known the Stanley Cup since the 90s. Like, I think if any team in Canada can do it, I got probably the most faith in Edmonton, just of the Canadian teams. Vancouver, maybe. I mean, they're really, really good this year right now. They're I don't know how or why, but they are. It just is what it is. But, yeah, I'm blown away by that win streak. And speaking of the Canucks, I got to talk about them very briefly. The Canucks are just really good. I don't really understand why, but they just are. Like, for one, they're in first place in their division. They're one of the top teams in the league. Like, they're just good. I don't like Elias Peterson, JT Miller, Quinn Hughes, Philip Peronik, former Red Wing, having a pretty good year with them. He was traded last year at the deadline, and in a move where I just thought maybe they were just in this weird limbo where they didn't know whether or not they were a good team or a bad team. No, they're a good team. They've been amazing this year. Like, and from top to bottom, it just seems they got a lot of guys being contributors. I mean, even Elias Lindholm, who's not like amazing. He hasn't had an amazing year, but he's got 32 points. You know, like, it just seems this is a fun team, and I'm just sort of shocked that they've managed to keep it going this long. Like, if you were to ask me which team I was most excited for, or which team I thought was going to take the biggest step forward, probably wouldn't have been the Canucks. But they managed to make it work. And I can appreciate that. And it's not a fluke. I mean, like, obviously make it to the playoffs, see what you can do, but it's not a fluke. This is a really well-made team. I don't know how deep they are. I don't know if it's going to work out in the long term, but right now, right here, they can make a run for this thing. And that's a Canucks team. They've never had it done. They came close in 2011, but they never got it done. Certainly the people of Vancouver would love to see a championship come their way. But moving on then to a team that is not convincingly good, but they are, though. The Philadelphia Flyers are good? Huh? What? Huh? How? I'm going to be honest. I don't know any of these people on their team. I don't know any of them. They've got just 2 guys with 40 points. Travis Konecny, I think that's how that's pronounced. Joel Farabee. I mean, like, huh? Why are they good? Somebody explain to me. I mean, Samuel Harrison has had a good year. 260 goals against average. But you don't have anybody that's in the 900 save percentage on your goalies. I genuinely have no idea why they're good. Like, I mean, I guess I can look at their upcoming schedule here, but, like, I mean, right now they're playing the Panthers. They're down 1-0, but they got the Jets. That's a team that's in the playoffs. That's not going to be an easy game. They got the Kraken. They got the Coyotes. Those are 2 teams they could probably beat. You got the Leafs, and then you got the Devils. Like, their February is very winnable. Like, they can just keep it going. Like, they're winning at a pace to where, like, they're feeling good, right? They've given themselves a little bit of a cushion to where, like, there's a good shot that the Philadelphia Flyers make the playoffs. I think that on top of the Canucks, the Philadelphia Flyers are the most unexpected team. I had no expectations going into them. If you would have asked me, I would have just thought they were going to be bad because they'd been bad for a pretty long time, but they're just good. I don't know the science behind it. They don't have a lot of superstar players. They don't have a lot of guys having crazy years or anything. Like, they're just kind of a good team. It's kind of an old school thing. I can appreciate it. But I wanted to also point out some of the big players in points. Let me see if I can actually pull that up. This is a really weird way of putting it. It's like okay, here we go. This works. So you got top players in points. I think I wrote down the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I put the top 5 players in points here. It's slightly changed because of some guys are playing games, or I don't. It might be. I think there's been some games at this point, but it's still the same top 5. So you have number 1, Nikita Kucherov from Tampa Bay. I mean, Kucherov is playing out of his mind. He's got 85 points. Yes, you heard that right. 85 points. He's got 32 goals. And we're at the All-Star break. We're post All-Star break. Like, how? How is this possible? But then even on top of that, in the West Conference, you got Nathan McKinnon, and from Colorado, I should say. He has been absolutely unbelievable as well. 85 points for him as well. That's an Avalanche team that could really make a run for this cup. They want to get revenge from last year, not being able to finish the job, not being able to repeat. It's hard to repeat in the NHL, but I think they could certainly make a run at it. Cal McCarr and Nathan McKinnon on your team. It's going to be a good time. Number 3, you got David Pastrnak. Talk about a future, not just a future, a current superstar in the making. David Pastrnak, he was a kind of, I think how old is David Pastrnak at this point? Isn't he like in his early 20s, right? Where's his age? Oh, no, he's in his late 20s. Okay. They just extended him. That was the thing, right? He's 27, so he's entering into the prime of his career, but he's really made a name for himself. He is 72 points. He's got 33 goals. He's playing unbelievable. He's a large part of the reason why Boston has been so successful this season. So you got to love what you're seeing from David Pastrnak if you're a Boston fan. If you're an Eastern Conference fan, you're dying inside. So that's pretty much where you're at there, because Boston just will never go away. They're like herpes. They're hockey's herpes. The Boston herpes. That's what they should be called. They never go away. They just don't, and I hate it. On top of that, you also have some guy named McDavid. I don't know if anybody knows who he is. Connor. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. He's got 67 points, 20 goals, 47 points, or 47 assists. And he's tied with JT Miller of Vancouver. I mean, makes sense. You're one of the top hockey teams in the league. You're going to have one of the top points getters in the league. JT Miller having a great year, 67 points, 21 goals, 46 assists. Just been very good year for Vancouver. We talked about them very briefly, but overall, hockey season is really starting to heat up. We're less than 30, or not less than 30, close to 30 games to go in the regular season for at least the Red Wings. So you're down to the final 32 games. Right now you're in the playoffs. Trade deadline is going to be coming up here relatively soon. You're going to make some moves, Stevie Y? And what other teams are going to make moves? I mean, if you're Columbus, you're going to start selling off some pieces. If you're Ottawa, you're going to start selling some pieces. Chicago, certainly going to be selling pieces for whatever pieces they have, because they are very, very devoid of that. But either way, that brings us, of course, to the ultimate superb owl breakdown. I don't know how long this segment is going to go, but I want to see if we can make this a clip, one way or the other, because, or wait, do I want to do the Super Bowl? Oh, I just realized I want to do it. I want to send a message. I almost forgot I have to send a message. Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that first. Talk about the NBA trade deadline. It is this Friday, okay? We are mere days away. It's February the 9th is the trade deadline, okay? Look, I don't believe Troy Weaver is going to do anything right, okay? But statistically speaking, okay, you have to get some things right? Like at some point, you accidentally make a good trade. Maybe not necessarily, but I'm begging you, Troy Weaver. If you're going to make moves, don't, and I mean don't trade for Tobias Harris. Don't do it. I don't care. No, I don't care. I don't care. We're pulling up Tobias Harris. First of all, Tobias Harris this year, he's not ideal. Okay, not ideal. He's about as good as most of the players on our team, actually. Actually, somewhat worse. 17 points, 6 boards, 3 assists on the season is just his, regular counting stats. Obviously, former Piston, so he has some connection with Detroit. But let me put it this way. If the Pistons of the late 2010s were willing to let you go, you could not have been that good of a player because we kept bad players. So if you weren't even in that category, no. Tobias Harris is not good, okay? You bring in Tobias Harris, things are going to be bad. It's not going to be like Tobias Harris works with the Sixers to some degree because he has Joel Embiid, because, he had James Harden. It is a better situation for Tobias Harris. It is not going to be a good situation if he comes to Detroit. But even worse than him, okay? The one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, from Flint, Michigan, one Miles Bridges. Now, Miles Bridges, you might look at his stats and you might say, hey, 21 points a game, 7 boards a game, 3 assists a game. He must be playing pretty good. Nay. Okay? For one, he is, let me see if I can find the advanced numbers. Here's the advanced numbers, okay? His true shooting percentage is 55%. Okay. So, pretty okay. But let me see. There's where's his shooting volume? Can I get his shooting volume? I can't get I want to. He shoots a lot of shots, okay? That's my point. He gets a lot of points, but he's attempting a lot of shots, okay? Okay, here we go. I guess I could just do field goal attempts per game. So 17 field goal attempts per game, which is the highest he's ever done in his career. And what do you know? His points are also the highest. What an interesting idea. It's interesting. He shoots more. He actually gets more points. How does that work? His field goal percentage is 45%. His 3-point percentage is 36%. So he's below average in that regard. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. I need to collect my thoughts because I have bad feelings about this. Miles Bridges is the definition of no sizzle, no steak. Okay, you look at his stats and you're like, he's looking good. Can I get like his last games? Okay, let's see. Can I get points? Where is it? Where's points? There we go. His last couple of games. Hey, last night. Yeah, actually last night he dropped a 40 bomb. The night before, 19. Couple of nights before that, 30 bomb, 20 bomb. But let me also point out how many assists one Miles Bridges is getting. He has not had more than 5 in that span. In the span of the past 5 games, he has had 1 assist per game. At the most, he'll have 5. So, yeah, maybe he'll get you a double-double. He might get you some rebounds, a lot of points, but passing the ball, he will not do. Getting assists, he is not. Not much of a, not much of a passer, one Miles Bridges. Similar to Zach LaVine. Now, luckily, Zach LaVine decided to end his season as opposed to potentially getting traded to Detroit. But if you go out and you trade for Miles Bridges, I don't know what you're going to give him. And whatever it is going to be worth way more. You're going to give him picks. You're going to give him, I don't know, Jaden Ivey. You're going to give him, Monte Morris. I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to give him something that's of far greater value. Monte Morris isn't really of that great value, but you understand. If you go out and do this, you will essentially have told me, I give up. Please, Tom Gores, kill me now. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Miles Bridges, I don't know. He's going to be going to court every other day because he can't stop beating up his wife or girlfriend or whoever it is. Like, he's a head case. You're going to be bringing him back home, which not usually a great thing for guys who have off-the-court problems, to bring them closer to their boys, so to speak. And he also does not pass the ball, or he's largely a negative player on the court if you value plus minus. I mean, like, on the game that he dropped a 40 bomb, he was still a -4 player. So he says, F it, I don't play defense, all I do is ball. He gives you nothing. And it will not really change the amount of wins you get. I mean, it'll increase, okay? But it'll be a lot of just empty calories. So I'm begging you, Troy Weaver, Tom Gores. First of all, Tom Gores, sell the team. This is ridiculous. Okay, we're sitting. What is the Pistons record right now? What are they sitting at? I have to know. What are we sitting at? 6-43. Okay. We're on pace here to win single-digit games. We're on pace to win less games than the Lions did this year. That's where we're at, okay? So, please, pretty please, don't do this. Just don't, okay? I know that it seems enticing. You want to bring the kid back. Come home, Miles. Don't do it. Don't do it. Not interested. I don't want him. I don't want it. I don't want you to think that I want him. I don't want to watch him. I think he's a terrible human being. I don't want him in the league. And the worst part is, if you actually do want Miles Bridges, you could have gotten Miles Bridges for free. You could have just in the offseason matched Charlotte's offer. Right? Nobody else in the NBA wanted him. No contender wanted him. No, competent team wanted him. OKC wasn't calling. Sacramento wasn't calling. Denver wasn't calling. Philly wasn't calling. Boston wasn't calling. No, only team stupid enough to call would have been Charlotte, who, they already had them, or us, right? Those were like the two teams that would have been stupid enough to make a decision like this. And frankly, they're probably the only two teams left that would make the stupid decision like this. It's like, I don't know. We need somebody. Somebody's got to sell tickets. We got to put somebody on the banners. Yeah, great. We'll put a serial, domestic abuser on our banners. Yeah, great. It looks super on a team that's 6-43. You know what else is funny? Pistons haven't won more than 30 games since 2018, 2019. That's it's not ideal. It's not ideal. Okay, it's not ideal. But that was all I had to say. Please, Monty Williams. First of all, Monty Williams, retire. Clearly you didn't want this job well enough, or at least you didn't get a good enough idea of what you were getting into. Troy Weaver, resign, and Tom Gores, sell the team. That's all I ask. To the point where I was thinking about this. Like, the Pistons were much more interesting when they were losing like a million games in a row. What do I get out of them now? After the trade deadline, let's assume they don't make a move at the trade deadline. What do I even get out of them? I get terrible basketball. Okay, wonderful. And that's it. I just get kind of bad basketball. Sometimes they'll win. Maybe they'll lose like 5 or 6 in a row, maybe 10. And then you think, oh, maybe they're going to do another. No, and then they win. These teams don't show up, and they don't really care because it's the Pistons. They could run their G League team out there. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, so. Anyways, on that very happy note, we will move along. I realized I hadn't taken a drink basically the whole show. So my throat is going to appreciate that later. That's not true. Well, maybe it'll grow stronger, But it's time, all right? I know we've been putting it off. We wanted to get to the other news, wanted to get to the other sporting stuff, but here we go, all right? Super Bowl Sunday is this Sunday. And we're going to miss football when it's gone. But for right now, this is it. The ultimate showcase. 49ers, Chiefs. Red on red crime. I was looking for some sort of analogy. I don't know. That's what I came up with. You don't come to me for, limericks and rhymes. You go see Dr. Seuss, all right? So, I took the liberty of going through their depth charts, and I didn't pull up any particular stats, but I did pull up the groups and who I think is the better group, right? And we're just going to talk about it live. We're going to really break it down. And then from there, we'll talk about the narrative. We'll talk about, the situation, going into the game. What's the storyline? Oh, that's wonderful. That's going to make the cut. What's the storyline? What's going on? All that jazz. So we'll get started here, obviously, with the quarterback position. Mahomes v. Purdy, otherwise known as the finesse talent, inherent skill set of Mahomes, against the kind of game manager, against the, system quarterback, if you want to use that metric, against consistency, against just putting it on the field. This is an interesting matchup because it is truly the matchup of the two kinds of quarterbacks you see in the NFL. Mahomes is an expert, and I mean an expert in the art of improvisation. Okay, if this guy was an improv comedy, he would be, winning all sorts of competition. The guy would be the funniest man in the world. That's how good he is at improv. Like, play starts to break down. That's when Patrick Mahomes is actually at his deadliest, right? That's when he becomes, him, so to speak. If you want to use the kids' terms, that's when he is him, so to speak. Brock Purdy, on the other hand, when things start to collapse, that's when he becomes not him. But when things are or things are isolated, things are, contained, he's able to be protected. His weapons are getting open. That's when he is a killer, man. I witnessed it firsthand as a Lions fan. You can't give this 49ers team life. You certainly can't give Brock Purdy life. You got to suck that life out of him. You got to sack him. You got to make him uncomfortable. You got to make him on the run. And look, I know he ran a little bit on the Lions. That's not usually how he works, right? Like, he's not really a scramble quarterback necessarily. If you can collapse the pocket on him, he's probably not getting out. But I don't know. Maybe he's started to develop a new skill set or develop more skills. I don't know. As far as who I mean, Mahomes is ultimately the better quarterback. But I think this is actually an interesting matchup. It reminds me a little bit of the Super Bowl between the Bucs and the Chiefs a few years ago, where, Brady, very similar team, like a very loaded team, elite wide receivers, elite running game, elite defense. But Brady was not, in his peak, right? Brady was not in his prime. He still had an amazing year because he's Tom Brady. I don't think it's going to turn out that way as far as the game, but it very well could. If Mahomes and this offense does not show up in the second half like they did in the AFC Championship game, yeah, it could be bad. But speaking of the offense, the weapons here, I think, is where you probably get at the biggest discrepancy. Now, I'm not listing every single one of their weapons, so just so we're clear on that. I'm listing just the guys that sort of stand out to me and who you would need to have big games for a successful, end, so to speak. So for the Chiefs, you got Kelsey, you got MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you got Rashee Rice, you got Isaiah Pacheco. All pretty good players. Kelsey having an amazing playoff. Kelsey, obviously not the Travis Kelsey of yesteryear, but still a solid tight end. Still, future first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the great tight ends ever, no doubt about it. But outside of him, that's where things get a little tricky. MVS has had a great couple of games here in the postseason, but on the year, he was really not all that great. Rashee Rice, on the other hand, he's okay. he's been good in the postseason. Again, these players have been good, but they're just sort of, in a weird way, they're kind of like how Brock Purdy is to the 49ers. Like, they're not bad. Like, they're really not negative, but they're just like, they're not, man-boy separators, so to speak. They're not like strike the fear into you guys. They're consistent when they're on the right page with Mahomes. When Mahomes is hitting them, they can do some damage. But, that's really the question. Can they be on the right page? Because on the year, they really weren't, but they've been looking a lot better in the postseason. And that's just the reality. On the other side, you got George Kittle, you got Debo, you got Ayuk, and you got C-Mac. You got Christian McCaffrey. Now that is, without a doubt, the scariest four-headed monster of weapons probably in the NFL. George Kittle, absolute dog. One of the best tight ends in the league. Debo Samuel, absolute dog. You can use him in a variety of ways. You can use him in the backfield. You can use him as a midfield threat. You can use him. You could probably use him as a deep ball threat. And there's just a variety of ways you can go about using Debo Samuel, and that's what makes him so good. So it makes him so potent as a weapon for this offense. Brandon Ayuk, he's having a breakout season. Last year I think was his first 1,000-yard receiving season. This year he's got 1,300 receiving yards. Brandon Ayuk is the deep ball threat. We saw it a couple of weeks ago. Against the Lions, right? With that crazy couple of catches he made. He made the crazy catch off of the Vildor helmet that should have been an interception if Vildor used his hands and not his head. But he's one of those guys that just seemed to kind of go under the radar the last couple of years. But that's probably because he really wasn't utilized as much, or he just wasn't. He was developing in the background. And this year, he really has taken a step forward. He's really shown himself as one of the top receivers in the league. And again, you pair him in a receiving room, in a passing room with Kittle and Debo. It's like, well, yeah, of course he can find himself getting wide open when you have those two cats running around. Not gonna be easy to manage all three of those guys. And then on the other side in the backfield, you got Christian McCaffrey, who, if they win this game, very well could be the Super Bowl MVP. Like, he is certainly one of, if not the best running back in football right now. He's absolutely elite. at any point he can break off big runs. Now, to be fair, in the AFC Championship game, he only had I think he had one kind of big run. The Lions did a pretty good job of containing CMC from breaking out those big runs, which does bode well for the Chiefs defense. Obviously, they're one of the top defenses in the league. I don't know how they do against the run, though. I don't know what their rankings are against the run. But I mean, it's still CMC. It still makes a play action threat because at any point, CMC, he's so strong. He's so quick. I mean, he's everything in a running back, and he helps make this offense work, obviously. So I look at those weapons, and it's hard for me to give the edge to the Chiefs. I mean, like, if you gave even half of those guys over to Mahomes, I mean, they would win this game by 100, right? But they're all on the 49ers. So obviously not all of them are going to have elite, amazing games, but if just one or two of them have elite, amazing games, actually, you probably need two of them to have really elite, amazing games if you want to win the Super Bowl. But either way, it's a little bit of a mismatch in that regard. Now, on the defensive end, I just sort of grabbed a bunch of guys. I didn't grab, from secondary or line or what have you. So for the Chiefs, this is one of the best defenses in the league. You got Chris Jones. You got Snead. You got Karlaftis. You got Willie Gay. You got a lot of cats, okay? L'Jarius Sneed, guy's just an animal, okay? Guy is an animal in the passing game. If you throw a ball and L'Jarius Sneed is in the area, he's knocking it out of the air, and then he's probably going to knock you onto the ground. So he's a threat. George Karlaftis and Chris Jones on that defensive line, that is, that is the Cerberus without three heads. What's two-headed Cerberus? What's that called? Ortherus? Why do I know this? I know too much about mythology. I think it's an Ortherus or something like that. It's a two-headed dog, monster, creature thing. Either way, Chris Jones and George Karlaftis are absolute animals. They're killers. Those guys are going to make you pay. And Willie Gay as a linebacker, also a very, very great player. Certainly keeps the middle of the field in his territory. He's going to get a lot of tackles, as linebackers tend to do. On the flip side, you have for the 49ers, Bosa, Chase Young, Armstead, Fred Warner, and a whole lot of other guys, right? Like, again, the thing about both these teams' defenses is they are loaded. They're like, I named just 4 or 5 guys from both of them. And I know it's like, oh, you forgot about this guy. You forgot about that. It's like there's not a bad player. Like that they're just all good. And it makes sense. You're in the Super Bowl. You're going to have good players at that point. But it's really hard for me to decide which unit I find more terrifying. The name recognition makes me put San Francisco in front. But Kansas City's just been consistent, man. I mean, they made Lamar Jackson look like an idiot. And some of that might have been Lamar Jackson being himself. But it's never easy. It's always a mutual effort, right? So what I will say is I think whichever one of these defenses make the opposing team's quarterback uncomfortable, and it's a lot harder to make Mahomes uncomfortable than it is to make Brock Purdy uncomfortable, I think that team is going to have the edge. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a defensive touchdown from either of these units. There's probably going to be some turnovers as well. Be shocked if there was no turnovers this game. I wanted to briefly talk about the kicker as well. Butker versus Moody. So the reason I want to talk about this, Harrison Butker, obviously a vet of this league. He's been kicking for, I don't know how long he's been kicking for. Seems like basically my whole life it seems like he's been kicking. How long? Let's see. Harrison Butker. Feels like my whole life he's been kicking. Yeah, I mean, he's been kicking for 6 years for Kansas City. I mean, he's one of the greats. He's one of the best kickers in the league. On the other side of it, you have an interesting situation with the rookie kicker, Jake Moody. So obviously they take this guy, Jake Moody, out of the University of Michigan. He missed a kick in the conference championship game. Though it was early in that game, so it was made up for. He made a kick later in the game that obviously changed the situation, and then he made a kick even after that. This is going to be an interesting spot for kickers. I don't know if they're going to rely on the kicker. I don't know if you're going to see a lot of fourth and going for it. If they're going to take the points, if they can get them. I don't know. I mean, neither of these coaches are like, I guess I'm used to Dan Campbell and going for it on like 4th and 1 regardless. But I mean, Andy Reid, certainly he's known for taking that risk. I mean, Kyle Shanahan is a smart guy offensively. So I don't know. I mean, like it really, I think if it comes down to this, like comes down to who they need to win, they need a game, a game sealing win or a game sealing kick. I'd probably trust Harrison Butker a little bit more than Jake Moody just because of the experience. But here's sort of the narrative about this game. So we talked about the position players, we talked about skill players, talk about it all, right? I didn't talk about the O-lines. Do good. Here's the situation, all right? I wrote this down. I'm going to read it at verbatim, okay? It's a rematch for Patrick Mahomes' first Super Bowl. Though both these teams consist of talent on both sides of the football, Chiefs' offense is in the postseason has been very good compared to the regular season, but the defense continues to be a threat from the regular season into the postseason. 49ers, on the other hand, are consistent and well-insulated as they have been all year. Though they have had to mount 2 big comebacks late in games past couple of matchups here, both in the divisional round and in the conference championship round. Here's the thing. 49ers go down 24-7 like they did to the Lions against the Chiefs. Good luck, okay? Now, the reason I say that is not because it's a slight against the Lions, like that the Lions are the only team that would do that. It's because the Lions had to have everything go wrong all at once, and they had to have everything go right all at once in order for that comeback to happen, right? Odds of that happening again, pretty darn low, especially to a team that, has been there and is looking to repeat, which is insane to me. When you think about, okay, going into this year, the Chiefs, they start the season with a loss. First loss of week 1 in Mahomes' career, right? First loss in September, I think, ever. Like, you go into the year, the Chiefs just never look good. They have that terrible game on Christmas where the Raiders just knocked their socks off. And now they're sitting with a chance to repeat. They're defending their championship to the final stay. And the best part, and not the best part for Raiders fans, they're doing it in a division rival's house. I mean, if you're a Raiders fan, it's got to be bad. It's got to be bad, man. If the Chiefs win this game, you got to watch Patrick Mahomes hoist another Lombardi, but this time he's doing it in your house. That, I don't know, man. I would feel sick. I would feel sick to my stomach. Like if I saw like the Packers win a Super Bowl in Ford Field, oh man, I would want to throw up. I would go into the bathroom and I'd throw up blood. It'd be over. It'd be done. I wouldn't want to live anymore. It'd be done. It's a little dramatic, but either way, I do think that this narrative is a little interesting. I know there was a lot of people, a lot of Lions fans in particular, talking about, I don't want to watch the game. I have no interest. Wah. Shut up, okay? Look, I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds like I'm, trying to be high and mighty. I'm really not. I think it's ridiculous if you don't want to watch. Like, if you don't think this is an interesting matchup, I just don't think that you're that much of a football fan, frankly. Like, we broke it down. These are 2 very good teams, and you can say, "Oh, I want new teams." I want a Corvette and a giant mansion. You don't always get what you want. You get what gets served to you. It's not like we're getting 2 very boring teams. We're getting 2 teams, one of the top offenses in the league in the 49ers, and a top defense as well. And you got the top defense in Kansas City with one of the finest quarterbacks ever trying to defend his title. And it's a rematch from a Super Bowl a couple of years ago where Mahomes won his first championship. Like, I just don't see how this is not an interesting matchup to people. I don't get it. I don't get it. But look, all of that is to say, my pick for this Super Bowl, and Seth agrees with me, and we're going to mark these picks down, and then, next show we'll probably break down the overall, like, total 2023-2024 season from preseason to the Super Bowl, who ended up getting the most picks right. I'm going to take the 49ers. I think that they are overall the more consistent team. Now, the problem is eventually your consistency can run out, so to speak, and the hot team, they will win it out. They will finish the job, so to speak. And I don't want to – I hate betting against the Chiefs. I didn't really want to bet against the Chiefs last year, and, hey, it worked out, right? The Chiefs ended up winning that game, but in this particular case, I think it's going to be tough for Kansas City to win the game when their offense looked as not great as it did in the AFC Championship, for example, where they scored just 17 points. You're not going to beat the 49ers scoring 17 points. You're not going to beat most teams scoring 17 points. As good as their defense is, it would be pure shock and awe if they have an offensive performance as bad as they did in the AFC Championship game to win this game. And I just don't see the 49ers. I think they're a team on a mission, man. And they want revenge. A lot of the guys that played in that Super Bowl in 2020 are still on the 49ers. They want revenge. And San Francisco, they've been dying for a Super Bowl as well for a very long time. They haven't had one since the 90s, right? So I will be rooting for the 49ers, and I will also pick the 49ers. And Seth agrees with me. He's also taking the 49ers. So we'll mark those two down. And, yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. I hope all the people who say they're going to not watch the Super Bowl, I really hope you can move along with your life and get past the fact that the Lions lost the game. It's just reality at this point. I've moved on. I'm focusing a little bit more of my attention on the draft and then getting better and getting back to that game next year. But either way, 49ers Chiefs, I am taking the 49ers. Seth is also taking the 49ers. And that is the final pick of the 2023 NFL season. And that is also the end of the show for tonight. So, obviously, this next week's show, it's going to be post-Super Bowl reaction. It's going to be talking about everything. We're going to probably break down even the awards of the season. We're going to break down the season itself, maybe some of our overall takeaways, our feelings about it. And then from there, it'll just be not a whole lot of football until the NFL draft, basically, until, and focusing on the offseason. So it's been a fun ride, obviously. I appreciate everybody for stopping by and hanging out, talking football. It's a great time, great time. Looking forward to next season one way or the other, but obviously the season's not quite over yet. So with that, I'm going to head off, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. We'll break it down. We'll have a lot of fun. Hopefully some big news outside of just the Super Bowl happens. So we'll have a great show, as we usually do. So have a great night, everybody, and have fun watching the Super Bowl on Sunday. See you later.